locked the fuck in. Let's go. Alright, this is Nyko's story. Chapter 8. The People of the North. Fortified village nestled between two rocky ridges. Walls made of sheet metal and wood, topped with rudimentary watchtowers where silhouettes in thick coats watched the surroundings, weapons in hand. Inside, compact wooden houses, skin tents, and salvaged buildings formed heterogeneous but sturdy ensemble. Smoke rose from the chimneys, and the hum of activity echoed in the distance. "Welcome to the Valkars," their guide announced in a deep voice. Heavy village gates opened slowly with a metallic creak, revealing a crowd of warriors and inhabitants gathered to observe the strangers with wary but mostly curious looks. The convoy stopped in the center of the village. A man approached them. He wore a heavy brown fur cape with an axe and a Mossad C-96 hanging from his belt. His piercing blue gaze fixed on each of them one by one before settling on Vanya. "Who are you, stranger?" "I'm Vanya Kurilenko, envoy from Nova Kiev. We are here to deliver a message from our kings to the Valkars. We must meet your chief." Silence fell immediately after Vanya's declaration. Valkar warriors exchanged glances, some intrigued, others suspicious. The man in the brown fur coat nodded slightly, assessing the situation. "Follow me." With a gesture, he made the crowd that had gathered around the convoy step back, and the strangers were escorted through the village alleys. The air was saturated with the smell of burning wood and tanned leather. Children in anoraks watched them with wide eyes before being called back by their parents. Den, walking slightly behind Vanya, scanned the surroundings attentively. Everything was made for survival. Nothing aesthetic, nothing superfluous. Every wall, every beam had been reinforced with whatever was at hand. They lived in a world of ice and metal. They thrived in it. Finally, they arrived in front of a large log building, more imposing than the others. Two large torches burned on either side of the main door, casting moving shadows on the walls. The man in the fur cape opened the door and motioned for them to enter. "The Jarl awaits you." Vanya glanced at her companions before stepping inside. Den, Alice, Hussein, and Rakid followed her, their boots crunching in the wooden floor. The interior was warmer, lit by several fires and oil lamps. In the center, a large, solid wooden table loaded with maps and some pieces of dried meat. Behind this table, a man stood up, the Jarl, who was tall, older than most of the village warriors, but his stature and steely gaze left no doubt about his authority. Blonde hair was cut to his shoulders, his beard carefully braided. A wolfskin cape covered his broad shoulders, and a massive axe rested against the table. At his side, two guards stood straight as pillars of ice. One of them immediately caught Den and Alice's attention. A young man, younger than the others, but with a build shaped by the rigors of the climate and training. Steel blue eyes detailed each member of the group with a neutral, almost cold expression. His arms rested on the hilt of a machete at his belt, but he made no hostile gesture. His companion, older and marked by years, gripped his rifle as if every moment could lead to a fight. Jarl placed both hands on the table and fixed on Vanya. "We don't often see envoys from Nova Kiev here." Vanya didn't flinch. "Times are changing. Europe needs to unite." Jarl raised an eyebrow. "So it's a message of alliance. It's a summons," Vanya clarified, pulling out the sealed document. "Kings and chiefs of Europe's tribes are gathering to decide the future of our lands. We need to deliver this message to the King of the North." A heavy silence settled. "Our ancestors never needed alliances." "Your ancestors never had to face the Horde," Vanya replied bluntly. Fuck ads! I'm out. Bye. I'm out. Bye, guys. I just can't deal with it anymore, guys. There's too many ads. You know? Way too many fucking ads. Fuck ads. I hate ads. This is what I think of fucking ads. Hey Doc, I can see you on this little TV. You have a little TV, Callie? You gotta get everyone to get me on TV, Callie. Then what little TV do you see me on? Is it someone else's little TV? Is there someone else watching me besides you, Callie? You suck. I don't know what you mean, Callie. I'm so dumb. I don't know what you could possibly mean. Do you trust me, Callie? Good answer. Solid answer. Smart answer. You didn't trust me when we play Marvel Rivals. Cause I know you're a noob at the game, Calvin. I trust Queen because she's played. That's just the way it is. You gotta earn the trust. And I thought you did earn my trust. I was keeping you alive in the backline during those last few games we played like last week. Unless I'm mistaken. And I'm also really bad at the game. No? Shit. Well, I guess I'm wrong. That's okay. That's okay. Gunner, who had remained silent until then, gave a slight smirk. Strangers want us to march under their banner, he said, skeptical. Den tensed slightly, but Vanya didn't look away. No one wants you to march under a foreign banner, she replied, but if you don't come, if you let the rest of Europe decide without you, then you'll become strangers in your own lands. A low growl echoed through the room. Some Valkyr warriors seated around the room exchanged meaningful glances. I'm not even listening to what you're saying, but just no. Well, you're absolutely right, Callie. That's all I can say. Sup, y'all? Yo, Raymond, how's it going, good sir? Raymond, have you checked out, I don't remember. Have you checked out the new YouTube channel?
Welcome to a talk story.
We got one of our shorts up to 1K views. It's fucking huge. Go check it out. We premiered. Yeah. We premiered, and we have one video in waiting right now that will premiere on Friday. Oh, this is the wrong account I'm on. I have too many accounts. But if you want to check it out, because it's unlisted, so you can technically watch it. So if you want to go check out you know, get a nice little sneak preview of the new video, go check it out. Yeah, Blue Horror Stories. Oh, Jesus, Scoozy. Whew. But yeah, let me know what you think. Like, comment, and tell me what I need to improve. Do you like the voice? Do you like the voice acting in that final one? Because I changed up how I did the voices and everything. The story overall, you know, most people didn't make it past the 20-second mark. So, I need a stronger hook, I think. But the hook is supposed to be like the climax of the story, right? Or like the twist or something like that. And you're like, oh shit, and then it's the anticipation the entire time of waiting for it to happen and then seeing what the aftermath of that is. In this case, it's the hook on this one is... Oh, oops, I'm retarded. I'm on the wrong page. We're reading Nyko's. I got ahead of myself. Wait, one can see that. Like a second people see leave? Wait, you didn't know that? Yeah. In your analytics, you can see how long someone is on your ship for. So you go to your videos. And you go like analytics. In this case, 48% made it, but I lose about, yeah, most people skipped. So you see how there's these dips and bumps? That's where people skip. So they've basically been skipping through the story, being like, huh, okay. Yeah, within the first 10 seconds, you lose, like, quite a bit. And then you look at, like, for instance, this one, which is quite longer. Look at the analytics for it. Uh, 40% dropped at about the 17-minute, and then about half of them after about a minute. And then the further into the story, the more people I lose. But then you look at the shorts, like the one that got 1K views, right? Look at the analytics on it. Guess is people who have like autoplay on. Yeah, that's kind of what you want it in. That's what the randomness kind of comes from, is the autoplay factors and people just like leaving YouTube on and just random stuff popping up. But it's like, yeah, we lose basically everyone before the story even starts. So it's like 20 or 30 people out of the 1,000 actually watched the entire thing. Yeah. So you gotta really catch them with something that makes them stick to it, right? But we got 13 likes on it and 1 dislike. Normally the reason why people dislike is simply because okay, I think we're back here. Like, the problem is, if you haven't found your audience already, right, and people aren't looking for story narratives, they're going to be skipping over all of your stuff. So establishing just a minor audience, that's why it's like, I'm actually pushing, like, really hard on stream for people to, like, go check out the channel. Because then driving more and more traffic to it will just kind of build it up, right? So the more people I can get to actually go check out the channel, subscribe, watch the videos, watch the playlists, leave the playlist running in the background, like, comment, all that good stuff. Just, it helps so much. It's literally the difference between, like, 10 views, 100 views, or 100 views or 1,000 views. It's like 3 comments and 2 likes, and like 10 people watching the entire thing. It seems to be about where the math lands. A low growl echoed through the room. Some Valkar warriors seated around the room exchanged meaningful glances. Jarl stared at Vanya for a long moment before slowly folding the document. You're asking the Valkars to march with you, but tell me. He placed a parchment on the table and his gaze hardened. What do we gain by following you? Silence. Alice, who had so far contented herself with observing, finally spoke, crossing her arms. The opportunity not to be exterminated. A few laughs rose among the warriors, but not from the Jarl. Still watching Vanya, searching for a flaw, a doubt. You think we're afraid? He asked slowly. No, Vanya replied firmly. I think you're smart enough to understand that a people alone has never won a war against an enemy that crushes everything in its path. The Jarl exchanged a glance with Gunnar, who with his second guard. Then, slowly, he settled back into his seat. I'll think about it. Den sighed discreetly. It wasn't a no, but it wasn't a yes either. Silence settled in the great hall. The Jarl leaned back in his seat, staring at the parchment sealed on the seat of Europe's voivodes. Flames of the torches made his steel eyes shine. Inscrutable. Vanya and her companions remained motionless, awaiting his verdict. But before he could respond, a voice rose. Jarl, allow me to speak. All eyes turned to Hussein. A man from the desert stepped forward, his face half hidden by his wool scarf. His gaze was calm, but his voice carried a gravity that commanded attention. You see me and think I'm not one of yours. That's true. But my ancestors, like yours, have always fought for their freedom. The Jarl said nothing. He watched him attentively. Hussein continued, stepping a few paces toward the table. I've seen what the Horde does. I've seen what's left of the lands it has crossed. Entire cities swept away, their inhabitants reduced to carcasses gnawed by crows. Proud warriors crushed, their banners burned. Children chained or abandoned to the wolves. Clutched his fists. We believed we could defend ourselves alone. We believed our traditions and lands would protect us. But the enemy has no honor. It doesn't negotiate. It leaves nothing behind except ash and bones. He stared the Jarl straight in the eyes. You believe you can hold out alone, but when they come, when they massacre your sons and abduct your daughters, who will come to help you? Who will rise to avenge your people if you refuse today to rise for others? A heavy silence fell over the room. Den cast a furtive glance at the Jarl. His face was still impassive, but something had changed in his gaze. A deep reflection, a doubt infiltrating his certainties. Finally, he sighed and slowly placed his hands on the table. In the past, we have repelled every invader. Every empire from the south or east has failed to subjugate us. We've never needed a council or an alliance to survive. Raised his eyes to Hussein, then to Vanya. But this isn't a war like the others. This isn't an enemy like the others. Tapped the parchment in front of him thoughtfully. Then, he nodded slowly. We will go see the King of the North. Den felt a tension release in his shoulders. Alice sketched a sly smile. It will take us a few days to prepare. In the meantime, you will be our guests. Cold wind blew strongly through the streets of the Valkar village, lifting swirls of powdery snow. The camp was in full effervescence, preparing for the departure of the King of the North. Were underway. Preparations for the departure to the King to the North were underway. Warriors checked their weapons, mechanical mounts were maintained, and supplies gathered for the journey. But as the pale sun barely rose behind the distant mountains, an unusual sound caught the sentinel's attention. Low rumble of heavy engines broke the morning silence. Village gates opened slightly, letting through a group of motorcyclists and vehicles in the colors of the Ash tribes. Warriors dressed in dark capes and composite protections, armed with rifles and blades, advanced cautiously. Their chief, a man with graying temples, wearing a thick coat marked with the tribe's symbol, dismounted and approached the Valkars, who watched them in silence. He stopped in front of the Jarl, fixing him with dark eyes. "We are searching for our voivode. Voivodine." Oh, because it's female. He declared in a deep voice. Silence fell immediately over the village. The Jarl crossed his arms, his gaze impassive. "Your voivodine," he repeated slowly. The Valkars exchanged glances, visibly perplexed. "No voivodine has passed through our gates," the Jarl replied in a neutral tone. The Ash tribe's warriors narrowed his eyes, scanning the faces around him one by one. He didn't look convinced, but he didn't contest the Valkar chief's words. "We don't want conflict," he added. "We traveled long and need supplies before continuing our journey." The Jarl nodded after a brief hesitation. "Then welcome. Resupply and rest. You'll be free to leave at dawn." The Ash tribe's warriors nodded and began to settle in, unloading their provisions. But fate didn't take long to manifest. As the visitors settled to eat and warm themselves around the village fires, one of them stood up abruptly, his gaze fixed on a silhouette walking behind the dwellings. A woman, dressed in a thick fur cloak, her long blonde hair cascading over her shoulders. Warrior widened his eyes before immediately kneeling, his fist clenched in his chest in a solemn salute. "My queen!" The other warriors followed suit immediately. Kneeling in turn, their gazes lowered under the stunned eyes of Den and his companions. Silence fell over the village. The Valkars, bewildered, observed the scene with curiosity. Vanya, however, stopped dead. Her clear eyes swept over the faces of the men kneeling before her. She remained frozen for a moment, then let out a weary sigh. "Rise," she said in a firm voice. The warriors hesitated but obeyed. Though their posture remained respectful, Vanya crossed her arms. Her gaze hardened. "I am no longer your queen," she declared. The warrior's chief frowned, visibly troubled. "It's Timur who sent you, isn't it?" The man nodded. "Yes. As soon as he learned you had left Nova Kiev, accompanied by only 2 stalkers, he ordered us to find you. Fears for your safety." Vanya pursed her lips. She should have expected it. Timur would never let her disappear into the wild without reacting. Den and Alice, positioned a few steps behind her, observed the scene, visibly stunned. "I am no longer Voivodine," Vanya repeated, her tone harsher. "I am just a messenger on a mission for Europe. I command nothing more, and I don't want you bowing to me anymore." Ash Tribe's warriors chief held her gaze for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Even if you no longer want it, for us, you always are." Silence weighed for another moment before Vanya looked away. She walked away without adding a word, leaving Timur's warriors standing in the snow, still torn between their respect and incomprehension. A few days earlier, on the territories of the Ash tribe, snow fell silently on the desolate plains as the convoy advanced at high speed, its yellow headlights piercing the icy mist of twilight. Timur Glazkov, draped in his long black fur coat, sat in the back of an armored vehicle, his gaze lost through cracked window. Council of voivodes in Nova Kiev had been necessary, but burdensome. Each chief had spoken in favor, strengthening Europe against the Horde, alliances to solidify resources to secure. Timur himself had weighed in heavily in the debates. He had imposed his vision. Minsk would not bend. Minsk would be a bulwark. But another thought haunted him. Vanya. She wasn't there. In another time, she would have been seated by his side, her presence a silent but undeniable support. When she spoke, everyone listened. She was respected, she was feared, and today she was absent. Timur clenched his jaw, his gloved fist slowly closing. He didn't have the luxury of bitterness. She had made her choice. He had made his. But at this moment, as he returned home, he felt her absence more than ever. A voice pulled him from his thoughts. "My voivode." Timur turned his head toward his second, a stocky man with features weathered by years of war. Vasily Nikolaev, one of his oldest loyalists. What? He asked in a neutral tone. We have news of Minsk. Tamura raised an eyebrow. Speak. Vasily hesitated for a moment as if weighing his words before taking a breath and announcing, Lev is moving. He's gathering men, weapons, nothing official, but he's stirring in the shadows. I think he's preparing something. Tamura had no immediate reaction. He simply observed a second, the silence heavy in the vehicle's cabin. Then a smile, cold as ice, stretched his lips. Good. Vasily and the other men present exchanged uncertain glances. Good, my voivode? Timur placed his gloves on his knees, his fingers idly playing with the leather. Means they're stupid enough to believe I don't see them. He raised his steely gaze to his second. You're gonna prepare a surprise for them. Vasily nodded, a predator's smile forming on his face. They're gonna fall into a trap. Timur nodded slowly. They think Minsk already belongs to them. They think I'll return like a tired king. That I'll beg or fall into a poorly set ambush. Smile vanished, his gaze hardened. They don't know yet that I've already dug their graves. Rest of the journey was made in leaden silence, punctured only by the roar of the engines and the howling wind outside. Tamir reflected. He knew Lev, an opportunist, a coward who thought himself clever, but he wouldn't have acted without support, which meant others were involved, high-placed men. He would crush them all. But Minsk had another surprise in store for him. When convoy finally reached Minsk, night had fallen, and the city seemed as calm as a cemetery. Under the cemetery under the snow, too calm. Tamur sensed it immediately. He stepped out of the vehicle, his boots sinking into the snow, soiled with soot. Palace doors opened before him as a messenger rushed to meet him. The man was pale, nervous. My voivode! Tamur gave him an impatient look. What? The messenger swallowed. It's Vanya, my voivode. Tamur's heart skipped a beat. She's back? No, she's gone. Tamur narrowed his eyes. Gone? Where? To the north, my voivode. Silence crashed brutally over the palace entrance. Bogdan frowned. With how many men? The messenger hesitated before replying in an unsteady voice. 2 stalkers. Slowly, Tamur closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Murmur of steel slipped between his clenched teeth. Idiot. Took a step forward, towering over the messenger who let her leave. Who let her leave? No one stopped her. She left of her own free will. Tamura passed a hand over his face. You should have foreseen this. You should have known Vanya wouldn't return to Minsk obediently. She never did. But leaving alone to the north, while he himself had just returned from Nova Kiev. There was something too sudden about all this. That's when an explosion rang out in the distance. Then a second, then a third. Shots began to crackle through the city. The palace was plunged into immediate chaos, and as alarms wailed, the shadows had awakened. The trap had just closed. Lev hadn't waited for Timur to regain his quarters. He had triggered the rebellion the moment he set foot in the city. Voivode Minsk watched the city ignite before his eyes. He had returned too late, but that didn't mean he was lost. Timur Glazkov was going to crush these dogs, and once he was done, he would find Vanya. Activate the plan, have the warriors resist weakly, and desert. His men nodded and left. The city was on fire. Columns of black smoke rose above the ruined buildings, masking the pallid moonlight. Bursts of machine gun fire crackled in the night, punctured by explosions that shook the city's foundations. Minsk was falling into chaos, and no one knew who would emerge victorious. In the streets cluttered with rubble and charred vehicle carcasses, Timur Glazkov loyalist forces fought in appearance with determination, entrenched behind makeshift barricades. But the insurgents, led by Lev Svetkov advanced inexorably. Entire regiments had deserted, others had been bought, and some had simply decided their loyalty wasn't worth a bullet to the head. Radios crackled with confused messages. No more centralized command. Timur had disappeared. No one knew if he was still fighting, if he had fallen in the heart of the battle, or if he had fled. But the insurgents left nothing to chance. I'm back! Marion just got home, so I had to get all the crap out of the van and get her set up for bed. She went clamming last 2 days. Ooh, nice. That sounds fun. Anything good? Anything good, Sean? Any colorful, you know? My mom used to collect shells. No one knew if he was still fighting, if he had fallen in the heart of the battle, or if he had fled. But the insurgents left nothing to chance. Central Bastion. Limit 1 day, but not much luck on day 2. Too many sand shrimp? Central Bastion, an old Soviet bunker transformed into the Voivode's seat, was under siege. Explosions shook reinforced walls as the armored doors gave way under the pressure of shaped charges. The last soldiers loyal to Timur put up a resistance that seemed fierce, but their numbers dwindled visibly. Lev Svetkov, the traitor turned pretender to the throne, advanced through the bastion's corridors, rifle in hand, accompanied by his best men. The smell of gunpowder, blood, and burned metal saturated the air. Find him, he ordered sharply. Dead or alive. I want this city to have a new voivode before dawn. The men scattered through the underground and the building's last corners. But Timur Glazkov remained unfindable. His office had been ransacked. Maps and documents still burning in the fireplace. A bloodied body wearing his iconic black coat lay in a corner of the room. The insurgents examined it, but the features were unrecognizable. The explosions and fights made any clear identification impossible. Is it him? Asked one of Lev's men. Lev approached, staring at the corpse with suspicion. For a moment he hesitated, then with a sly smile he straightened and declared in a loud voice, "The Voivode of Minsk is dead." His men raised their weapons in victory. The news spread like wildfire. In the city, the last loyalists, demoralized, abandoned the fight. Some were executed, others fled to the icy lands of the north. Minsk, the unbreachable fortress of the east, had just changed masters. But in the silence of the snow-covered mountains, kilometers from the burning city, a silhouette advanced, concealed under thick black cape covered in ashes. Timur Glazkov might not be as dead as believed. The great hall of the Minsk palace echoed with the clamor of the insurgents. Shouts of victory, hoarse laughter, and the clinking of metal mugs, the banners stamped with Timur Glazkov's seal, and then had been torn down and trampled, their black fabric trailing in pools of dried blood on the cold concrete floor. On the steel throne, Lev, the former right-hand man of the Voivode, savored his triumph. His face was marked by the fatigue of battles, but his eyes shone with victorious gleam. Around him, his men celebrated their seizure of power, convinced that Timur was dead. "He has fallen!" shouted one of the inebriated insurgents, raising his rifle in the air. "The tyrant is dead!" Cheers answered him. Lev leaned back against the throne's backrest, and a satisfied smile stretching his lips. Everything had gone as planned. Timur's forces had been scattered, hunted, and eliminated. Minsk now belonged to the rebels. That's when the first shivers of doubt crept into the euphoria. A strange silence settled in, as if the air held its breath. Then a low rumble echoed through the corridors. No, please, not ads, anything. I swear, please, just fair. It's not fair, guys. Ads are killing me slowly but surely without knowing how far we are with plenty of what? Huh? Who? What? Yeah, okay, Cap, good, yeah, okay, yup, love it, sweet, good, sick, woo, yes. Ads are good, I mean, what? Yeah, you heard it first here. Ads. The new #1 ad is ads and all ads. The add to ads and then add with ads for ads. And you get Super Saiyan 10 ads with times 1,000. Actually, you know what? Fuck that. Times 9,000 Kaioken. Fucking beat that Ultra Instinct. Strange silence settled as if the air held its breath. Then a low rumble echoed through the corridors. Lev straightened abruptly. It wasn't a simple collapse from the fights. He knew that sound. An explosion rang out, blasting the heavy hall doors in the deafening crash. Shockwaves swept the room, throwing some insurgents to the ground as a cloud of dust and smoke invaded the space. Cries of surprise turned to screams of panic, and from the chaos, shadows emerged. Fists. First, dozens of men armed to the teeth, advancing in tight formation. They gunned down without hesitation the insurgents still standing, methodical, merciless. Then, amid the carnage, a silhouette finally detached from the smoke. Tamir Glazkov. He walked slowly, like a specter returning from the dead, his long black fur coat flapping in the drafts. One hand on his rifle, the other on his knife's hilt. His face, barred by a fresh gash, remained impassive as he surveyed the scene. Lev felt fear seep into his guts. "Impossible," he murmured. Timur stopped at the foot of the throne, dominating the man still seated there. "So that's it," he murmured. "The great Lev, the traitor, the rat who thought I saw nothing." Lev tried to compose himself, placing a trembling hand on his pistol. You were supposed to be dead," he spat. Timur stretched a cold smile. "Dead?" He glanced around. "I let you win." An icy silence fell over the room, surveying insurgents. Those not yet mowed down by the shots froze. Lev himself had felt a shiver run down his spine. "What did you think? You could simply take minks that I just let myself be slaughtered like a dog?" Tamir took a step forward. "I knew you were going to strike. I knew who you were. I knew that if I let you believe in your victory, you'd all gather in the same place." "Queen, yo, what's up? Welcome, welcome. How's it going? Callie has a new ASMR, boyfriend ASMR. You should check it out. I thought it was really good. He's improved a lot. He tried something new, and I think it worked. But I need your opinion on it because you're an actual woman." "52 completed. Hell yeah, Sean. Let's go." Turned his head slightly toward his men standing in ranks behind him. "And now you're mine." Lev barely had time to react. "Can we listen to it here, or should I listen on my own?" We can listen to it after this story if you want, Queen. But, you know, go check it out, give it a like, and give it a comment, and watch it muted in the background anyways, just to, you know, boost Callie. Lev fell to his knees. Oh wait, where are we? Lev barely had time to react. Timur grabbed him by the collar and yanked him from his throne, throwing him violently to the ground. Lev fell to his knees. Timur lowered his weapon and pressed the barrel against the traitor's sweaty forehead. The traitor trembled before Timur Glazkov. Gun's barrel pressed against his forehead, sweat beaded on his livid face while his heavy The heavy silence of the great hall let only the crackling of flames in the braziers he heard. Tamir didn't avert his glacial gaze. Queen! There's Callie. There was no hesitation, no doubt, just the implacid, I'm going back to bed. No, Callie, why are you leaving us? Don't leave us. Tamir didn't avert his glacial gaze. There was no hesitation, no doubt, just the implacable certainty of the judgment about to fall. As you can see, I'm not dead. His voice, calm and sharp as a cleaver, made the remaining insurgents shudder. Look at me. Lev dared to raise his eyes and saw only death in the voivode's steel pupils. His lips trembled, desperately seeking an excuse, a plea, but Tamir gave him no time. It is I who am your king. The next instant, a dry detonation cracked in the air. Lev collapsed, a trail of blood splattering the hall's floor. His inert body lay at Tamir's feet, like a silent warning to anyone who would still dare question his authority. The voivode slowly lowered his weapon and scanned the still-living insurgents, frozen in absolute terror. Then he turned his head toward his men. Now that this matter is settled, he took a step forward, absent-mindedly wiping his pistol's barrel on his cape. Then, with a voice that resonated in the hall, implacable and sovereign, go fetch your queen. Soldiers exchanged a glance before nodding and executing. In the silent palace, only the voivode's shadow still dominated, immutable and indomitable. Storm had passed. Tamir Glazov reigned again. In the north of Europe, in the Valkar's village, preparations continued. Agitation reigned everywhere. Between the tents and solid houses, warriors busied themselves, harnessing the mechanical mounts that would carry them to the court of the King of the North. Den observed this ballad in silence. He was leaning on a stone brick wall, hands in his pockets, scanning the disciplined comings and goings of the Valkars. Their way of life was fascinating, the crossroads of the old world and the necessities of the present. They had adapted without even renouncing their identity. No uniforms, no rigid hierarchy, like in other European tribes, but absolute respect for customs and strength. Children were already initiated into knife handling under the strict supervision of their elders. There was no complacency here, only the necessity to be ready to survive. Alice, seated on a rock nearby, cast a skeptical glance at the young Valkars. These kids handle daggers better than I do, she murmured, tugging at her aviator jacket. They have no choice, Den replied. It's not a question of talent, it's a question of life or death. Alice fixed on him. Don't you think it's a bit too much? We didn't grow up here. They were interrupted by a hearty laugh behind them. And what do you think, that we're forced to live like this? Den and Alice turned. A young man with blonde hair, tied in a ponytail and shaved sides, looked at them with his piercing blue eyes. He wore a leather anorak, padded with fur, and a machete hung from his belt. He was tall, solidly built, but his expression betrayed a certain amusement. Gunner. He introduced himself, crossing his arms over his chest. And you? What are your names? Denisovich, but you can call me Den. She's Alice. Gunner inclined his head slightly before turning his gaze back to Alice. His smile widened slightly. So you think we're too hard on our children? Alice straightened. I'm just saying, learning to handle a knife before knowing how to read is a bit extreme. We learn to survive here. The cold doesn't give children time to remain weak. Alice opened her mouth to reply, but Den cut her off. It's the same with the Ash tribes. If you don't know how to handle a weapon, you don't live long. Gunner nodded. You understand. Patted Den's shoulder before turning his gaze to the village's agitation. So, how come you're hanging out with a voivodine? He asked, rubbing his hands. Den and Alice looked at each other before replying. She hired us as guides for the north. We're stalkers by trade. We knew nothing of her rank. The north wind whistled through the gaps in the wooden palisades, lifting swirls of fine snow. Vanya stood motionless in the center of a circle of warriors, her face closed. There were about 10 of them, seated on crates or standing, clutching their weapons. Their heavy coats were covered in frost, their faces weathered by cold and battles. Away from the village's main squares, they had gathered here, between the wood houses and makeshift walls, sheltered from prying eyes. Group's veteran, a man in his 50s, with a face scarred by cicatrix? I don't know how to say that word. Cicatrices stepped forward. "My queen," Vanya crossed her arms. Her lips pinched into a thin annoyed line. "Don't call me that." The man didn't blink, his gaze anchored in hers. "You will always be our queen." She shook her head slowly. "Return to Minsk. Timur needs you more." "Kelly!" "Than I do." The silence weighed on the assembly. None of them moved. A bit in the background, Dan and Alice observed the scene, arms crossed. Alice leaned slightly toward her companion, a sly smile. Who would have thought this woman was the voivodine of Minsk? You never know. She murmured. Dan raised an eyebrow. "It's bad for business. If something had happened to her under our protection, we'd have been crucified in the public square." Alice nodded, casting a glance at the warriors encircling Vanya. "Now that she's surrounded by our war dogs, we don't have to worry anymore." In front of them, Vanya persisted, trying to rid herself of her unwanted protectors. "I order you to return to the fortress." She launched her tone harsher. Veterans sketched a slight smile. "If you are no longer our queen, then you can no longer give us orders." He approached slightly, defying her gaze. "We will protect you, whether you want us to or not." The icy silence fell over the square. Vanya took a deep breath, fists clenched. Then she sighed, annoyed, before casting a lasting glance at the men facing her. "Fine, but don't get in my way." She turned on her heels, walking away with a firm step. Behind her, the warriors didn't move. They didn't need orders to follow the one they had sworn to serve. Gunner's tent was a battlefield. Gutted bags littered the floor. Assembled weapons awaited checking, and his fur coat was thrown over a wobbly stool. Every gesture was precise, quick, almost mechanical. Tried not to think, just to act. But he knew it wouldn't last. He felt her presence before even hearing her voice. No. One word. Sharp. He didn't interrupt his gesture, tightening the straps of his bag, but he felt the tension in the air. "I don't need your permission," he snapped, dryly. Yordis entered, her coat still covered in snow. Her eyes shone with cold fury. But there was something else, something indefinable. "You won't go. You're going to stop me." He finally fixed on her. She stood straight, arms crossed, her steely gaze locked on him. "You don't even realize where you're stepping into," she growled. "You're leaving with strangers for a war that's not yours. You think I'm a kid incapable of making his own decisions?" "You are a kid!" Gunner burst into laughter. Dry laugh without joy. "Ah, of course, because you've decided I'm still one. Huh, like always." Hjordis opened her mouth to retort, but he didn't give her time. "You coddle me, you watch me, you tell me what to do as if I'm incapable of surviving without you. But have you ever thought that maybe I'm sick of it? Sick of every time I want to make a damn decision, you're there to block me?" He violently threw his bag onto the table. "I'm not a kid, Hjordis." She didn't respond immediately. He saw her throat tighten slightly, but she straightened and breathed more calmly. "You're not ready. And it's up to you to decide that." "Yes." The words snapped in the icy air. Gunner clenched his fist. "You're my sister, not my mother." Hjordis froze. The air became heavy. He saw her jaws contract, her breath quicken. Then, slowly, she raised her head and fixed him straight in the eye. And she dropped the truth. "Exactly. I am." Crushing silence fell in the tent. Gunner blinked as if words made no sense. His heart tightened brutally. His breath caught in his chest. "What?" Hjordis didn't look away. I am your mother, Gunnar. The world tilted. The beats of his heart echoed like war drums in his ears. His whole body ignited with raw, uncontrolled rage. He took a step back, shook his head, his gaze wild. No, a nervous laugh escaped him, dry and incredulous. No, this is a fucking joke. Hjordis didn't move. She let him process. But he didn't want to process. You're kidding, right? She didn't answer. Gunnar felt a burning wave rise in his throat. Violent, merciless anger. He pointed at her, his arms trembling. You were 20. 15. Her voice was calm. The Gunnar exploded. 15! He backed away further, eyes wide, searching for a lie, a trap, a mistake, but no. It was there, right before his eyes. It always been there. You lied my whole life. Hjordis finally opened her mouth. I protected you. You lied to me, he yelled, fists clenched until his knuckles whitened. Fuck. You looked me in the eyes my whole fucking life and you lied to me. His breath was short. He felt his legs tremble. But he didn't want to weaken before her. Hjordis took a step forward, but he backed away immediately. Don't touch me. His voice was a low, broken growl. He no longer saw her as before. No longer as Hjordis, the big sister he respected despite her excesses. Now she was a stranger, and he had to leave. Without another word, he snatched his bag from the table and slung the strap over his shoulder. Hjordis opened her mouth to speak, but he cut her off with a dark look. I'm leaving! His tone was final. She said nothing. Gunnar turned away and stormed out of the tent, the icy wind biting his face. He didn't know where he was going. All he knew was that he couldn't stay here anymore. Interesting twist there, Nyko. Didn't know she was that much older than him? Was this like a thing that does the village know this? Like, is this like a thing that's like just him? Or just her? Like, it makes it hard to believe that he's gone all this time without even having a hint of it. And why would the village go along with it? But who knows? It feels kind of random. But I'm not sure, Nyko. Oh no, it's a really good chapter. Jump back and forth is a little awkward, but I'm pretty sure that's a formatting issue because of the translation. Excuse me, I was in the restroom. No worries, Nyko. The Hjordis being his mother felt like really abrupt, you know? And it's almost unbelievable that he would never find out through the village. Like, why would the village kind of be protecting him and saying, does the village know that Hjordis is his mom? Is she just fucking with him? Like, feels really weird. Maybe there's only certain people that knew? It's not the born village of Hjordis. I don't know what that means, Nyko. Oh, it's not where she's from! It's not where Hjordis is from. She wasn't born there. So they wouldn't know that. She arrived later. I see. So no one would be able to know. Okay. Maybe you stated that in the last chapter when we were introduced to them. But maybe make that more clear through like other characters that they are kind of foreigners. In a way. But yeah, totally a solid chapter. The back and forth, the origins, the voivode with Vanya. All solid background moments, and like, oh my god, the conniving with that, like letting the guy think that he won to let his guard down. Fucking prime, dude. That shit is prime. One giant W.